Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Barnes & Noble. Erica Jong is here to introduce tonight's author, poet Kim Dower, and I'm pleased to introduce Erica, best-selling author of Fear of Flying, which worldwide has sold 20 million copies. Erica has also written award-winning books of poetry, nonfiction, and other novels. Let's give Erica a warm welcome.
Thank you. This is a little bit impromptu. I should just give you my view of Kim Dower. Kim Dower, about 20 years ago, wrote me one of the gutsiest, most chutzpahdik letters I ever got in my life. And I knew she was a special person. And the letter began, "Dear Erica Jong, if you'll forgive me for saying so, I believe you are a woman who loves too much." She was then promoting a book called Women Who Love Too Much, which became an absolutely runaway bestseller. And I did blurb the book. I did read the book before I blurbed the book. I was impressed with it, as Kim was. And I never forgot a person doing PR who had the gumption to say something about the person they were writing to, instead of hemming and hawing and saying, if you've got the time, if you're not too busy, whatever. I thought, this woman must be some hell of a great publicist and person. Cut to 20 years later, 30 years later, Kim tells me she's written a book of poetry. I dimly remembered that she had written poetry in college. I knew that Thomas Lux had been important in her life as a mentor, but when a friend who you like very much says she's written a book of poetry, it strikes terror into your heart. Yes. Because you think, oh my God, I like this person, what if the poems are shitty? What if the poems are terrible? What will I ever do? So I read the book with trepidation and fear, and I was knocked out. Kim has a very quirky mind. She has that chutzpah that I saw in her letter. She takes you on a path with each of these poems. It takes you somewhere you didn't expect to go. She reminds me a little bit of the Polish poet Wisława Szymborska, who won the Nobel Prize, each of whose poems takes you on a funny little journey, ending up in a place where you didn't expect to end up. So I like her mind, I like her metaphors. I could read any number of poems in this book and tell you that I love them. There's a poem called Different Mothers that encompasses all our mothers. There are poems about the first email of the day. There are poems about things in our lives, but they always take you, before they end, somewhere in outer space. And I love that about them. I remember once I wrote to the poet Anne Sexton that I was terrified of criticism and people always knocked my work, and that I was coming out with a new book of poems and I was very fearful. And she said, Erica, don't worry, they're not your poems, they're God's poems. They're just coming through your mouth. And I try to remember that about poetry, that any good poem is really God's poem, or the higher power, or the muse, or whatever you want to call him or her or it. That is the quality you get in Kim's poems. They are coming out of the force that through the green fuse feeds the flower, or whatever it was Dylan said. I probably misquoted. And they're real. And they transport you to another way of being. So I give you Kim Dower.
So if you don't like my poems, blame God. That's the, thank you so much. And I just want to thank you all for being here. There's so many people from so many different times of my life that it's awesome, to use an LA word. Do people say awesome in New York? I also wanted to thank Dennis Wurst, who's the National Events Coordinator for Barnes & Noble, for giving me this store tonight, because he said, you know, Kim, that's a celebrity store. We don't have poets there. And Dennis is sick with a bad cold, so he went home, but I want to thank him. I want to thank Erica Jong so much for introducing me and for that introduction. I did start writing poetry a long time ago in college, but before then, the first book of poems I was ever given by an alive person was Fruits and Vegetables. And I was in high school, and my friend from the building I grew up in at 251 West 89th Street, Todd Lester, wherever you are, Todd gave me a copy of Erica Jong's book and said, I think you will love these poems. And I still have that book, and I still love those poems. And you've been an inspiration to me for my whole life of reading that I can remember, so thank you. And I also just want to tell you all that you are sitting, this store used to be Schraft's, okay? And for all of you who know the Upper West Side, this is where I'd come with my grandmother for turkey on rye with Russian dressing and an ice cream soda. So today you can buy a book here, but it used to be a turkey sandwich, all right? So don't forget that. So Air Kissing on Mars, I've divided the book into 4 sections. And it's true stories, and you can decide for yourselves. People give me titles, because when I started writing again, I would ask people to give me a title to inspire me, and that's how I would write the poem. And Cranky in Paradise, because I live in LA, but we do get cranky. And how-to, because I believe that if there was more how-to in poems, poetry books, we'd sell more poetry books. So I put a lot of how-to. And I'm going to start with the first poem in the book that's called They Took the Mailbox Away. And the title is the first line of the poem. They took the mailbox away on Cahuenga and Clinton. I know because I wasn't feeling right. Decided to take a walk, figure things out, remember why I love the clouds. Found my rent check still in my purse. Gave me a goal, a project I could complete. But when I got to the corner, it was gone. Just space in the place where the box had been, where I'd deposited countless bills, birthday cards, where once I tossed a sticky, half-eaten ice cream dish. There was no garbage can in sight. I gave it some serious thought, but now realize the mess I made may have destroyed a young girl's last letter to her grandmother, stained a college application. What did admissions people think when it arrived with chocolate sprinkles stuck to the stamps? Worse yet, a love letter someone finally had the guts to send, smeared with butterscotch sauce, possibly obscuring the recipient's address, sender never knowing it was not received. When I saw the empty corner where the mailbox used to be, granted out of place on that isolated street, it hit me. The lives I ruined, the mailman's soiled hands.